I'm really excited about a lot of the new features coming to Spring Framework 7 and Spring Boot 4, and today is no different. We are taking a look at core Spring resiliency features like ConcurrencyLimit, RetryTemplate, and @Retryable. So in the past, if you wanted to take advantage of some of these features, you would have had to have brought in an extra dependency, the Spring Retry project. That is going to kind of go into sunset mode now, as a lot of these features are baked right into the framework. I'll start off here by heading over to my screen, and I'll show you this blog post from Sam Brennan. This is over on the Road to GA. This is a collection of blog posts covering a new feature every single week. This was the first one we released on September 9th, and this goes into a lot of the features that we're going to talk about today. We're going to build out an application. I have called this app QuickBytes, and we are going to use this to build out sort of a food delivery service. Obviously not full featured, but we're going to go into a lot of the features here that have been brought into the Spring framework. So if you want to, go ahead and grab this. I'll put this in a link in the description below. To get started, we can go ahead and head over to start.spring.io. Spring Boot 4 is not out yet. A week from today, actually, when I'm recording this. But for right now, RC2 is out, so you're going to want to select that. And then I'm going to go ahead and fill in some information. I'll say dev.danvega, QB for QuickBytes, but you'll find the other one has a different package structure in the final repo. But I'm going to go ahead and add just the web dependency. That's all I need today. I'm building out some web features that pull some data in from some JSON and use a lot of these new features like the @Retryable Annotation, the RetryTemplate, ConcurrencyLimit. We'll talk about some listeners so that we can like follow some events when we're going retrying some of this stuff. And it's going to be a lot of fun. This is all we need. So go ahead and click Generate to download a new zip file. You can open it up in whatever IDE or text editor you're most efficient in. For me, that's going to be IntelliJ. We have what we need. Let's write some code. Okay, there's a little bit of code here. So we're going to do a little bit of copy pasta, but you can go ahead and grab certain things like the data files that are written in JSON. You can grab them from the repository if you want to follow along, pause the video, work through something, and then come back. So I'm going to try and keep this a little bit concise though, and do a little bit of pasting of some code. So I'm going to start off with some data. I need a directory. I'm going to call this data. And here's where I'm going to copy two files in. So I'm going to go ahead and copy these in, paste them over here. And these are going to be our data files. So we are starting off with some restaurants. We have some restaurants like the Burger House, Pasta Paradise, Sushi Station, Taco Fiesta, etc. So we have some restaurants here. And then we have some menu items. So we have different menu items, and we can see that they're tied to different restaurants, right? So the first thing we need to do is be able to read in this data. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new package. We're going to go ahead and call this restaurant. And in here, I'm going to go ahead and load in two records. So again, we'll write some code today, the interesting bits, but what's not really interesting, I'm not going to write with you. So we have a restaurant. This is, again, we're just matching up the data to what is in those JSON files. So I have ID, name, cuisine, rating, address, and a list of menu item IDs. And then from a menu item, we have an ID, restaurant ID, name, description, price, category, and whether or not it's available. Okay, so now what we can do is we can go ahead and we can create a new class. We are going to call this our DataLoader. Now, we are in Spring Boot 4 and Spring Framework 7. So if you missed it, I did a video on what's coming new in Jackson 3. Jackson is the data processing library we use in Java, pretty much the standard. There's a few others out there, but this is the one we use in Spring. And Jackson is moving from 2 to 3, actually a combination of 2 and 3. But one of the new things in Jackson 3 is the new JsonMapper. So let's go ahead and quickly use that to build out something that we can load some data with. So I'm going to mark this as a component. I'm going to go ahead and add a few things here. So we have a logger, this new JsonMapper, and then we have a list of restaurant and menu items, or not lists, but maps. And I'm going to go ahead and say that we need a constructor with that in it. And now we get the JsonMapper that Spring wires up for us. So now we have a mapper that we can use to basically read some data in. And so we're going to read some data in, and we're going to do it like this. So first we have, we're going to actually implement a command line runner. So command line runner, and then we override that run method. We say we're loading some restaurant data from the JSON files. We call this load data method. And when it's done, we say it's completed successfully. Again, I'm not going to go over this too much because we did this in a previous video, but we're using the new JSONMapper to read in data from two different files here. This is the restaurants JSON and the menu items JSON. If this works, we should go ahead, because this is marked with @component, this run method gets called as soon as the application context is up, right before the application starts. So we should be able to go ahead and run this and see that data loaded. And there we go. So loading restaurant data, loaded 5 restaurants, 20 menu items, data loaded, completed successfully. All right, and I'm just going to paste in a couple more methods. This is like, hey, I want to get a list of all the restaurants. I want to get the menu items, get a menu item, etc. So other classes can use this data loader and just get the data. Again, in a real world application, we'd be reading from a database or something. I'm just reading data from a JSON file and making it available to other classes. So I want to start with the @Retryable Annotation. And to do so, we need to go ahead and create a new Java class. We're going to call this the restaurant service. Okay. And in this restaurant service, we're going to do a couple of things. First, I'm going to mark this as an @service annotation so it gets picked up. We're going to bring in a few things here like that data loader. So I'll go ahead and say, let's get a logger, let's get a data loader. We're going to use random to simulate some random flakiness. And we'll go ahead and get the data loader through constructor injection. And now we have an instance of that. Okay, so I'm going to paste in a couple of methods here. Let's talk about them. So in the restaurant service, I'm going to have this thing and this restaurant API exception. Let's go ahead and create that. So create that. Sure, looks good. Yes, okay. So now, why is that? Let's look at this. Public class extends. What are you doing? Runtime exception. All right, so now we have this. So we have this get menu from partner. So we're fetching menus from a restaurant partner API. And what we want to do is kind of simulate some flakiness here. So we're saying, hey, about 40% failure rate, we're going to throw a new restaurant API exception. Like, hey, we tried to reach out to this restaurant, this API that is defined somewhere else, and 40% of the time it's failing. That's not real world. But again, something could go down, and we want to make sure that we are adapting to that and not just throwing errors. But we are going to throw an error first, right? So we're going to say if it's down, let's throw this error. And we're going to do a simulation of some delay. So we'll simulate for 200 milliseconds. And then we'll try to get that restaurant. If it's null, we'll throw another restaurant API exception saying that restaurant was not found. If not, we can go ahead and load their menu, successfully fetch the menu for that particular restaurant. Contrived example, I know, but it is going to show off what we needed to show off. So from there, I need a controller method that I can hit. So I'm going to say restaurant controller. And in the controller, we are basically just going to make those available. So let's say this is going to be a REST controller. The request mapping is actually going to be /API/restaurants. That looks good. All right. So now we're going to bring in some things. Restaurant. What is... Oh, restaurant, we don't need this yet. We'll come back to that later. All right, so now we have a logger, we have a restaurant service, we have a way to find all the restaurants. Now we need a mapping that we can go ahead and call that method that we just created in the restaurant service. So we're going to hit a restaurant ID, so something like rest-001/menu. And then we'll have an API request to go get the menu for this restaurant. So what we're going to do is we'll try this. We'll say restaurant service get menu for partner. If everything comes back okay, we'll return a response entity okay with the data that we need. If an exception is thrown, then we'll throw an error here. So we set a response entity status of 503. Here's the error, here's the message, here's the restaurant ID. Okay, so we're almost there. We can almost test this, right? So we can test this a bunch of different ways. I'm going to create a HTTP file here in IntelliJ. Again, this first one we're doing is just a GET request. You can open up curl, you can use HTTP IE, you can use Postman, whatever you like. I like to stay within IntelliJ here. So I'm going to say QB HTTP. And then we can do a couple of things. So let's go ahead and paste these in. So first, I want to just make sure that all the restaurants are available, right? So I can run this and see if we get all the restaurants, and we seem to be able to get all the restaurants. So now here's the retryable demo that we're going to do. We want to test that 40% failure rate. First, I just want to see some failures. So I'm going to run this and hopefully we see some failures. There right away is a 500, some internal server error. If we look at the logs, we have a null, failed to fetch menu after all retries. Again, we don't have retries yet, but we are simulating some issue with an API there. This time it went through, so we were able to get it. We run it again, I went through, we run it again. Now we get an error. So again, about 40% failure rate, which is good. This will allow us to show off what we need to show off. So what we're going to do here is we are going to add some retry capability to this particular method. And there are a couple different ways, but we're going to show you the first one, which is the declarative way. So what I want to do is use the @retryable annotation. And if we were to just leave it as this, what it's going to do, it's going to retry for any exception. So if we had any exception here, it would retry this method. We don't want that. We want to retry for a specific exception, like the restaurant API exception. There's also a max attempts, which I think defaults to 3. So we want to get more specific with that. So we want to say max attempts is actually 4, because the max attempts, I got confused by this at first too. The max attempts is the number plus the original one. So when I first tried it and it failed, that's 1. That's not just the reattempts, it's all the attempts, right? And actually, I'm going to back this up. So if all you do is come in here and say restaurant API exception, let's see here, .class, this is going to say retry it for any restaurant API exception. This is the same as saying includes equals that, okay? So with includes, I'm going to keep that. And I'm going to say the max attempts is equal to 4. The includes is equal to that. The delay, so what is the delay? I want a 1 second delay, so 1 second delay. And then I also want a multiplier. So multiplier is equal to 2. Oops. And what this means is that we're not just going to try it 1 second apart. We're going to do some exponential backoff. So we're going to double the delay for each request. So while the delay is 1 second first time, the delay is now going to be 2 seconds the next time. And then 2 seconds going to be 4 seconds, right? So we're backing off a little bit and changing that delay, because we don't want to just try it 4 times in 4 seconds, right? Because that might not be available yet. So this is a good way to do this. So I'm going to throw some comments in here so we have them in the final repo too, but this is just kind of showing that off. So let's go ahead and rerun our application. And what we're trying to get at here now is when we run these examples, we just don't want any failures, right? Like we don't want to, it's not the best user experience to just dump an error on the user. So here we're going to try and get this again. That first time worked just fine. We're going to try it again, worked again. We're going to try it, keep working. And see, we keep going and going and going. And now we have a 500 restaurant API failed. Oh, and actually, I just want to throw one more comment in here. So we'll retry again, right? Okay, this looks good. Let's go ahead and rerun this application. And let's go back over here and we're going to try this again. So we're going to run a GET request on this. So the first time that we hit this, we see that everything comes back okay. If we go over here, we see successfully fetched. So let's go back to our services and try this again. That looks okay. Oh, we're trying all restaurants. Whoops. Let's try this one again. And now we see a 500. Let's see what's going on here. All right, this was not working. And I just realized I missed a critical step here. So in the application, I need to go ahead and add this @enable resiliency methods. So this is enabling Spring's core resiliency features for method invocations at Retryable as well as at ConcurrencyLimit. So let's see if that fixes our problem. Probably will. Let's go back to our qb.http. I'm going to run this once and we see some hold up here. So I think now we have a menu item. Let's look at the logs. So we see, yes. So we tried to get the menu for restaurant 001, fetching menu from restaurant partner. This failed. We will try it again. Fetching from failed. We'll try again. Fetching menu from successfully fetched 4 menu items from the burger house. So that is doing exactly what we wanted it to do. We have this retryable annotation. We are saying, here's the max attempts you're going to retry. You're only going to retry when this exception is thrown. So we're kind of manually throwing it here to simulate that flaky external API. But when it's done, it will retry. It's doing it on a delay of one second, but with a multiplier. So we're exponentially backing off and not just firing 4 requests in 4 seconds. Oh, so this is really cool. Again, I think the exciting part, built right into the framework. And don't do what I did. Make sure if you're going to use these annotations, you go ahead and enable resilient methods. This I'm doing in the application class. This can be on any at configuration class if you want. All right, so the add retryable annotation is a great declarative way to go ahead and add retry support like we just did. But there might be times when you need a little bit more control over the configuration. So I'm going to create a new package here. We're going to call this driver. I am going to add a driver here. This is a driver record. This just has an ID, name, and rating. And now we want to create a driver assignment service. So I'm going to go ahead and say new Java class. We'll call this driver assignment service. This will be an @service annotation. And let's go ahead and add a few things in here. So we'll say that we need a logger. We need a list of drivers. We're going to use this retry template. So the retry template is something new. This is what we're talking about. We're going to add a constructor parameter here, but we're actually not going to get an instance of this. We are going to create one. And I want to kind of walk through this. So we could say retry template is equal to new retry template. This is perfectly fine. If you do this without any configuration here, what we are basically saying is that this implicitly uses retry policy.with defaults. So we're basically saying that we have 3 max attempts and that we will catch any exception here. So this is fine, but probably don't want to do this. What we want to do is we want to set up our own retry policy. So I might say var retry policy. That's not it. I want the builder. So retry policy.builder. And then I might set some things here. So I might set max attempts to something like 10. Maybe I had a delay. So delay is a duration of millis. Sure. So 2000. I might want to set the multiplier to something like 1.5 here. I might set a max delay. I'm not going to set it here, but you could. Again, we want to have it includes here, so we don't want to just catch on any exception. I might create a no drivers available exception, right? So exception.class. Of course, that doesn't exist yet. So let's go ahead and create it. This is going to extend the runtime exception. Sure, that looks good. And now I also want to go ahead and build this. So now I get an instance of it. So now with that retry policy, I can go ahead and say, here is our retry policy. Here's a retry template. Again, just giving us a little more control over some things, but we'll also see in addition here in a couple of minutes that we can also go ahead and add some listeners to this. I don't think you can do that to the Retryable Annotation. I could be wrong on that, but I'll have to look at that. So let's say that we have a method here. Let's actually bring a couple methods in, one of which is going to load some drivers into memory. So we just load 5 drivers here to the available drivers, which we've declared up here, right? Let's clean some of this up. And let's see. So yes, I want that here. So attempting to assign driver for order. So I don't have an order. Let's go ahead and copy pasta. So here's an order. So an order has a bunch of information about it. Yes, that one. So what we want to do here is we're going to use an atomic integer to track our attempts. And then we're going to use that retry template. So you see the execute here takes a retryable. Retryable is a functional interface. We can assign a lambda to that. And in this lambda, we are going to get the current attempt. That's why we're using this atomic integer here. So we're going to attempt to increment and get. Let's leave this on, I guess, for now. And then we'll simulate some random driver availability. We'll say 50%. So a bunch of these are going to fail. And when it does, we're going to throw a no drivers available exception. Again, that's what we're looking for here. So that should go ahead and kick in our retry policy. So we'll retry it again up to 10 times. So assign a random driver. And when we're done, we've assigned a random driver to this order. Okay, so this looks good. Let's go ahead and rerun our application. I'm going to open up our qb.http so that we can go ahead and grab another one here. Let's see, assign driver. That looks good. So let's do this. So we are going to simulate that 50% driver availability. So we're hitting API/drivers. Did I set that up? Oh no, we don't have a controller yet. So let's do that. Okay, so we're going to come in here and say new driver controller. Again, REST controller, request mapping /API/drivers looks good. We're going to paste some things in here. Nothing fancy going on here. We get that driver assignment service. We set it up with a constructor here. We have a post mapping. So we're going to post a request param of an order ID, and we're going to create an order. So we set up an order. We call that assigned driver. If it's okay, we go ahead and return that response entity. If it's not, we are going to we're going to return response entity status of 503. But again, trying this here, this should fail 50% of the time. We should retry it again. Eventually, we are going to succeed. So let's restart this again. Go back to our HTTP client, and let's go ahead and test this. Again, this is a post. We are using that request param with the order ID of 1. Let's see what happens. So the first time it went through, and it looks like driver assigned successfully. So we want to try that again. Looks okay. Now we see some slowdown here. Eventually we see that it's okay. So let's go ahead and look at our console here. And here is that. So we are attempting to assign driver, attempt 1, attempt 2. Finally, we assigned a driver to that particular order. So again, this is the retry template. If you want to use this, you get a little more control over it through what you can set. And then we can also go ahead and add some listeners. So what does that mean? This means that I can go ahead and create a new, and go ahead and I'll leave a link to the documentation and that blog post that we saw below. But this means that I can create a new listener class. So I'm going to say driver retry listener, sure. And what you can do is you can implement the retry listener. So we mark this as a component. And now if we wanted to, we can go ahead and implement some of these methods. So there's before retry, on retry success, on retry failure, and all that allows us to do, instead of polluting all of those like business logic methods, you saw that we were doing that before with those logs of like, hey, this thing happened and that thing happened. Now we can just say, okay, before retry, let's go ahead and try that attempt, and we can like log that out here if we wanted to. So we can start to get some more observability without kind of polluting all of those methods that we had. So the way that we go ahead and use this particular listener is by coming back over to our driver assignment service. And now with the retry template, so we can say retry template dot set retry listener. Now I've marked this as a component, so I don't want to just create a new instance of this. I'll say a driver retry listener and retry listener, and we'll get that. And then I can say retry listener. So now when I go ahead and do that, I'm not going to actually run this. You can go ahead and run it. And you'll see like these log statements happen on the various methods. I don't think I've implemented all of them here, but you can go ahead and test those out. So that is the retry template, giving us a little bit more control, allowing us to add that retry listener. Really, really great stuff here. All right, the last thing we're going to look at is concurrency limit. So let's say in the restaurant package, I had a new Java class called restaurant notification service. Let's go ahead and mark this with @service. We'll go ahead and get a logger here. So logger. And we're going to create a method in here. Actually, I'm going to create a couple methods that simulate delay one again, and then we'll talk through this. So I have this notify restaurant that takes in an order, and we are going to go ahead and log out the start time. We're going to log some information out. We're going to simulate some delay because I want to like have this one held up. I want this to like, hey, we maybe, you know, this happens in a normal application, right? There is delay when you have network calls. So I'm simulating this delay, and then we're going to log this out. What we want to do is we don't want to overload our partner APIs, right? So without a concurrency limit here, this particular, let's say during a rush hour, maybe a lunch rush, we could have 50 concurrent calls, and that could overwhelm the restaurant's notification service. Again, I'm reaching here. I'm just trying to come up with a contrived example that we can work through. But what I want to do is like limit this notification to a restaurant to maybe a particular number. So what I want to do is I want to limit this to say 3. So let's go ahead and just say @concurrencyLimit, and then I can go ahead and set this to 3. So this means that at no time will we send 3 concurrent notifications over to the restaurant. Okay, so that becomes, okay, well, how do I test that out? So you can do this a couple different ways. I actually have both a standard Java thread example and a virtual thread in the final example, but we'll just take a look at a normal thread example here. So I have this restaurant controller, and I'm going to paste this method in here. And what we're going to do is simulate something called the lunch rush. So lunch rush has started. We're going to simulate 10 concurrent orders at once, but we want to make sure only 3 are processed simultaneously. So we're just going to loop over this, create 10 orders. We're going to use the fixed thread pool. So we're saying, hey, there's only 10 threads, and we're going to submit all 10 orders to the thread pool. Now I don't have this restaurant notification service, so let's get that. So private final, yes, no, not like that though. We want that as a constructor parameter, and then that should be okay. So what we're going to do then is submit all the notification tasks concurrently. And to do that, we need to use that executor service. So we just looped over them and sent them. That's not concurrent. We are saying, hey, we want to send these all at a single time. So from there, we're going to use the executor service, submit. We'll try this. We'll send, notify the restaurant. If something happens, we will catch an exception. At the end, we'll clean things up. We'll use the executor.shutdown. We'll say it was finished. If not finished, we'll say something happened. And then we'll go ahead and log out some times and show that the lunch rush was completed. So let's go ahead and test this out. I'm going to use my HTTP client here, and we're going to test our lunch rush. So we'll say that one, and we'll come back here. And then again, we're just hitting the endpoint, but underneath the hood, we're going to simulate this at 10 times. So let's restart this. And then I'll go ahead and hit this. We'll see a little bit of a delay going on, which is good. And then we see the fixed thread pool. We get a message back. So let's go back to our console, and we can see in here that we are submitting all 10 orders. We can see sending notification to restaurant 3 times, but then the notification sent, it's trying that on a thread pool. Okay, yeah, so these are the ones that actually go to the restaurant. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then the lunch rush is completed. But again, we are not just sending all 10 at once. We are actually sending only 3 at one time concurrently. So that's how you can add some concurrency limit to your application using the @concurrencyLimit annotation. Again, if you missed the part before, in the application context or in the application or any other configuration class, you'll need to make sure that you enable enable resilient methods. All right, so that's all we got. These nice new features that you had to bring in an external dependency before are now available in Spring Framework 7 and Spring Boot 4. I even forgot about it, so make sure you enable resilient methods with that annotation. That will allow you to use the concurrency limit, to use @retryable. And I love the balance here. We can use that @retryable annotation for those quick declarative ways of saying I need to retry this based on this exception. Or if I want a little bit more control, I can reach for the retry template. I can create some type of listener to listen to a bunch of those events so I can get some auditing of what's going on when it's failing. That is going to be important. Being able to log those audit trails on what's failing so that we can hopefully fix what's failing. If it's in our control, maybe it's another service in our organization, we can work with that team to kind of figure out what's going on there. If it's out of our control, we can reach out to the API vendor and say, hey, I've noticed a lot of failures. Here's some data to kind of back that up. So super excited about this feature and all the features coming in Spring Framework 7 and Spring Boot 4. We are so close to a release. If you're enjoying this, I will have a playlist of all the features that I've been covering. You can find that in the description below. I had a lot of fun putting this together, friends. If you learned something new today, you know what to do. Leave me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and as always, happy coding.